You would think a small course about other people wouldn't teach you a whole lot, but it would actually help me overcome the things that I faced during the accident and after the accident, what your life could look like, what it does look like, and what you can do to make it like how you want it to be. This helped me explain some feelings that I didn't understand before.
Welcome to the Stay Free Forever Podcast, episode 14. My name is Clifford Fuel, host of the podcast that aims to help you adapt and thrive. My main job with my one-man company, Stay Free Forever, is to help people to complete courses that are usually, but do not have to be, assigned to them by a judicial authority, such as a judge, probation officer, or, as with today's guest, a county diversion officer. These courses correspond to their specific offense, such as DUI, theft, shoplifting, domestic violence, and about 20 others. Not infrequently, the person on the other end of the phone is quick to tell me that they are innocent of said offense and the reasons why. When I hear a pause in their story, I take a moment and invite them to look at the cognitive behavioral course as an opportunity to get to know much, much better their favorite person on planet Earth, themselves. And that usually prompts them to listen. Today, my guest is a young woman who never claimed to be innocent of her offense, which was a vehicular accident that badly injured her passenger, who is her sister. We will discuss this shortly, and the listener can decide for themselves if the assigned Stay Free Forever Personal Responsibility course was even warranted in this case. What caught my attention was that this student, already in the middle of a busy and intense semester at college in Colorado, took this extra coursework seriously and poured her heart into every question. Rae Gresham, who goes by Rae, was born 20 years ago in Palm Springs, California, and spent her early years up and down the Golden State, and then from middle school through high school in Missouri. Rae is one of 8 children reared by her mom, a medical assistant, and dad, a professional truck driver, among other pursuits. She is quick to point out that she has many more siblings than that, owing to her folks taking in foster kids along the way. Rae says that as a youngster, she was like a lot of girls and planned to grow up to be a princess or a ballerina. Those dreams evolved into maybe a doctor or a scientist, and she is currently pursuing a major in healthcare. In her spare time, Rae is a photographer, a potter, and a self-taught guitarist. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Stay Free Forever podcast, Rae Gresham.
Thank you for having me, Cliff. It's a pleasure.
Me too. Thanks, Rae. You mentioned you're self-taught on the guitar. What kind of music do you like or play?
I like a lot of folk music and stuff like that, but most of all, when I am playing guitar, it's on an electric guitar. I grew up listening to a lot of music with my family. That was kind of how we spent most of our time together.
Who are some of your favorite artists?
I really like Noah Kahan as well as Taylor Swift. Those are pretty popular artists at the moment. Their music has definitely given me a safe environment, even when I was having struggles and difficulties in the world.
I have a daughter who's a Swiftie.
It's the best way to be, honestly.
Why is that? What's so great about Taylor Swift, in your opinion?
I think the effort that she puts into her music and all of her shows that she does, it's very inspirational, but also the fact that she tries so hard to connect with the fans, regardless of how large her community is that follows her. And just overall her kindness, the way she's always given back to the community when people were in need, and even showing up at hospitals with patients that had cancer. Like, that's just going out of the way to do something for other people is just very admirable.
Right on. That's great. What are you going to be doing this summer?
I plan to take maybe a few classes just to stay on track. I think throughout the summer, I would just like to spend a lot of time with my family, a little bit of traveling, fishing here and there, just overall enjoying the outdoors, especially because when it gets cold around this time of year, it can be hard to go out.
You were outdoors when your accident happened, yes?
Yes, correct.
Would you set that up for us, please? What was that day like? How did it start?
It was my mom's ex-boyfriend's birthday. We were planning to go up on the National Mesa to do some fishing for his birthday because he really enjoyed that, and it was something that we were all able to enjoy together. My sister had never been on a side by side, which was the vehicle that we were in during the accident. Well, I had asked my mom's boyfriend at the time if it was okay if I took her out on it to sightsee and just overall enjoy the weather because it was, it was cloudy, but it wasn't too cold. So it was beautiful weather. The road that we had ended up turning down, it was loose gravel. She had mentioned heading back. We had been gone for a second, and so she was like, why don't we get back so we can go fishing? And so I had said, okay, I'm going to turn around on this turnabout up ahead. And so when I had went to turn around, our back right tire had hit a rock and we were flipped on our side. So side by sides do have seat belts. This one that I had been in, mine had been disconnected by the person who had been using it previously because they get jammed a lot due to all the dirt and gravel and stuff that you drive over. And so I hadn't put mine on. My sister, being how close we are, had said if I wasn't going to wear a seatbelt, she didn't want to as well. The thing that I learned most from this is the importance of seatbelts and helmets and things like that. And, the experience changed my life. It just flipped on its side, and with it being how loose the gravel was, it drug us a couple feet.
How was your sister injured?
She ended up undergoing a degloving of her forehead from about the start of her scalp down to where her eyebrows are. She had no fractures, no broken bones, no brain injury,
Mhm.
thankfully. It was aesthetic injuries on the outside of the skin and tissue.
She's hurt badly. Everyone bleeds easily from the scalp. What do you do?
A lot of those memories are still coming back to me. We both had ended up being knocked out. And when I had come to, she was on the bottom part of the side by side, and I was somewhat leaning on her, but the gear shift kept me from falling on top of her. As soon as I had realized she had passed out, that's when I had gotten up out because I noticed that her hair and part of her head was caught underneath the roll cage. And I was talking to her this whole time. I wanted to try and see if she could respond to me, try and get her awake and up and going. And she had come to, and I was in the middle of like trying to lift off up the side by side off of her. Like I maybe lifted it up just about an inch, maybe, and that was enough for her to get her hair uncaught. She had been so emotionally traumatized by this experience. She was asking me, what's going on? What's going on? And I explained to her, calm as I could, because this was my first accident I had ever been in. As calmly as I could, I said, we've been in an accident. I need to get you out of here. She had asked me to call my mom's boyfriend at the time. I told her that I had attempted to, but that I had no service. I had explained to her, stay right here. I'm going to go get us help. I tried to stay as calm as I could because I know if I would have freaked out, it would have caused her to freak out. I had been wearing slip on shoes and they ended up flying off of my feet during the accident. And so I was barefoot and I ran approximately 2 miles until I had service. And I had finally gotten a hold of 911. But as I was coming back towards my sister to go check on her after I had gotten a hold of 911, she was able to climb up out of the top of the side by side and come to me. And then for the rest of the way, I helped, have her lean on my shoulder until my mom's boyfriend got there. And then he picked us up and took us to where the ambulance was.
Michaela's your older sister?
Yes,
By how much?
by 7 years.
Okay. So she gets medical care, and how are the authorities involved?
Later that evening, I was not feeling the greatest. I was hurting, my body hurt. So I ended up going to the hospital, and the sheriff had essentially asked to speak with me. I did not agree with all of his behavior, unfortunately, during this incident, just due to the fact of he talked very aggressively with me and I was compliant with everything he asked me. I was just still so shaken up that like any sort of aggression was kind of making me uncomfortable. But I think that they did their job to the best of their ability.
Very kind of you. You, at some point, were contacted by the diversion office.
I had ended up going to court, and the DA agreed that the restitution that I was going to pay was learning from my mistakes, essentially. My diversion manager had just essentially explained that the course that they were going to give me was an online course and that it would just be about growing as an individual and learning from my mistakes. She was very helpful along the way and very kind about explaining how things would go, as well as the help of you, of course. And
What were your mistakes in your view?
honestly, my biggest mistake was knowing that neither of us had our seatbelts on and still continuing to go out. It's a hard thing to admit when you're in the wrong, but I do understand the importance of seatbelts, and I always have. I've always been very safe about anything I've ever done. I just wanted to have a fun experience with my sister and give her a good first experience of something like that. Unfortunately, it did not go the way that we had planned it to.
Do you recall how fast you were going?
I do not recall. My sister, she had recalled seeing it, and she said approximately 7 miles per hour. I do know I was not speeding. I was attempting to turn around, so it wasn't my goal to be reckless or do anything crazy whatsoever. It was just unfortunately a freak accident.
The personal responsibility course. When you're presented with this course, with what mindset are you approaching it?
At the time, I was thankful that I didn't face any serious charges or anything that would go on my record. I was thankful that they were going to give me the opportunity to prove myself and show that I understand that decisions do have consequences. I just went at it as it's a learning experience and it is a step I can take closer to healing. I tried to be as thorough and honest as possible to prove that I genuinely cared about how my decisions affected others. I was just thankful that it taught me so much about life in general. I mean, sometimes you think you do know everything. That definitely proved that I don't know everything, but it was very insightful and it was very meaningful to me because it helped me reflect on a lot of myself that I don't always realize.
The course is entitled Personal Responsibility. It's a cognitive behavioral course, but what does that really mean? Do you mind just describing the course as if you were explaining it to a stranger? What is this course like?
Overall, it gives you a series of different families and different dynamics that they live, or different individuals, whether it's close to what you've experienced, whether it's not even close to what you've experienced whatsoever. It gives you the insight of how people go about their life, and it gives you a perspective of other people's lives so that you're able to compare it to your life and where you want to go and grow as an individual. It's not something that will have any negative outcome. You can grow as a person, you can learn more about how other people work or yourself.
Are there any stories in particular that you recall from the course?
The Johnson family was definitely brought up a lot. Patterns that each person in that family made. If one person was abusive or did something, then the next person after that was getting abused, and then the cycle would just continuously repeat. And that taught me a lot about making the choice to change, because you can either end up like that or you could choose to do better.
As I read through your course material, a couple of things jumped out at me. In one answer, you said, "Unfortunately, I was raised in a dysfunctional home and I struggle not to believe the harsh words I've been told." When you say you come from a home where there's foster care and a lot of goodness going on, that seems not to square with that. How would you explain that?
If I'm being honest, I've come to say this saying a lot that most people are better parents to other children than their own. I mean, that's not the case for everybody, of course, but my parents definitely have the ability to care for people. I just think when you're put in a situation where, you're dealing with children that are challenging or put you through like a test almost of life. And I think the aspect of them being foster kids is that they didn't have to be there all the time. Like they weren't going to live there for the rest of their lives or anything like that, or they wouldn't be their parents for the rest of their life. I think that had a lot to do with it. And it's easy to be kind to people that you aren't entirely emotionally connected to because you're thinking more about how would what I do affect this person. And I think, the understanding that with family, no matter what you say to each other, what you do, mostly you guys will always stay in contact. And so I think that can make it a little more easy to be difficult to each other rather than people you're not biologically related to.
What was the worst of it growing up?
Probably my parents and the way they would argue or disagree. It would get physical, it would be emotional. To actually see it and see that there was a problem and there was nothing you could do about it, it definitely made me feel helpless, especially because proving a lot of emotional abuse can be difficult. What they say about like the physical abuse, it goes away because the cuts and bruises and things like that, those go away, but definitely the emotional aspect of it all, it's stuck with me, and it's definitely taught me about a lot of what I don't want to do, but it's definitely stuck with me, and it's unfortunate that I did have to experience it, but I am thankful for what I did learn from it.
How old were you when this was going on?
I was about 4 or 5 years old when I first started remembering it actually happening. And it lasted up until I was about 12 years old when my parents divorced.
Were you physically or verbally abused by either parent?
Yes, unfortunately, I have experienced both physical and emotional abuse from one or the other.
This is what I find remarkable. There's a question in there that says, how were you scripted? What happened to you between the ages of 0 and 10 years old? Your answer to that question was rather short and sweet. You said, I believe I was scripted with compassion, the person who strives for better. That doesn't sound like someone who grew up in a home where abuse and arguing and tension were the norm.
I think a lot of the ways that I was able to overcome those experiences and learn to not be like it was due to the fact that I watched it so much. I've always been somebody who observes a lot of people's behavior because you don't know what kind of people you want in your life until you really see how they are when they're by themselves or when they don't realize people are watching. And I think just knowing that there was, I don't know the right word for this, I guess a lack of a lot of love in that area kind of makes you want to give back to other people what you didn't have. And I think knowing there is an option to choose between whether you want to fall down that hole of anger and hurt and depression and abuse, or you can make the choice to decide to do better. And I honestly can't say how I got so lucky because I question it sometimes as well. But I'm very thankful that I have grown as a person who doesn't want to be abusive to anybody else or put them through what I had went through.
Did your sister Michaela, your twin brothers, your other three sisters come away with the same attitude that you have?
I would say that some of them did. They all have their own individual things that make them amazing people. But for the coming away from the abusive aspect, I would say that they've kind of cut anybody out of their life that is even remotely like that experience, kind of unfortunately built a wall around themselves. But Not everybody has the ability to be vulnerable, which is okay, and it takes time to grow out of that. But I would say that my two brothers and my sister that I was in the accident with always make the choice to, if you could be anything, be kind. They definitely have learned that. My three oldest sisters, they are kind of more of the put a barrier around themselves, which they have children and they have their family. So, you kind of want to protect that when you finally have that good experience when all you've really had is negativity.
So it doesn't sound like anyone in your family is continuing the cycle of verbal or physical abuse.
My siblings have definitely overcome that cycle. They've all individually stated to me that they don't want to be a part of that and don't want to put their children through that.
You were straight up about drugs not being a source of challenge for you at all in your life, but you do mention three other addictions, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on those, okay?
Okay.
Nicotine.
My freshman year of high school, it had become something that was very popular. I told my friend, I was like, can I try that, like what you're doing? After that, I regret this, but I kept it from my parents. I kept it from most of my family. I would hide it. I would ask my mom for money for lunch, and then I would actually spend it on nicotine. It was in a vape pen. I would get different flavors, sometimes blue raspberry flavored, Red Bull flavored. I mean, they make it all, unfortunately. I've gone through 3 times of attempting to quit. The first 2 times, I ended up relapsing on that. But this third time, I've been going pretty steady. I met my significant other, and they essentially helped me get out of smoking, thankfully. And looking back now, I feel a lot healthier now that I don't do that. I have a lot more respect for myself over the fact that I was able to commit to actually quitting something like that. While I don't have a lot of addictions, I do have an addictive personality due to my father's side of the family. Thankfully, I stayed away from drugs, but I did face about 4.5, 5 years of struggling with vaping, but I've not smoked in like 5, 6 months now. So
Good for you. You mentioned another of your addictions has been food.
since I was pretty little, I've kind of struggled with overeating when I'm stressed or not eating enough when I'm stressed. It comes and goes, unfortunately. And I've been able to work on monitoring it and growing out of that. But every day is a new chance to try and break that cycle. But it has definitely been one of the bigger things that I've struggled with, just due to the fact that life has so many stressors, and then you want something to calm you down or to distract you. And so that has just been one thing that, like, when you're stressed, spend money, go get a snack, things like that. I definitely am aware of it and have been trying to do my best to overcome that.
And then the third addiction you mentioned, video games.
My father was very addicted to video games when I was growing up. That was one of the bigger sides of abuse that I faced, is being ignored, left alone for hours on end because he was playing video games. Watching other people do it, you kind of, again, are like, let me try that kind of thing. And I've definitely grown out of it. Now that I'm in school, I don't have a lot of time to sit around, but when I do sit around, if a video game is available, it gives me that adrenaline rush, like you're excited to do something. And I think people that struggle with addiction with video games, it's due to the adrenaline rush that you get when you win or when you feel like you've accomplished things. And it definitely was a space that would take me away from what was going on in the real world. But definitely a thing that helped me break that habit was journaling and doing art and stuff like that, because it gave me the same feeling of feeling accomplished, but it wasn't as unhealthy for me as video games was. looking back, I've realized how much it affected, my friendships, relationships, things like that. And I'm just glad that I was able to break that habit.
What haven't we talked about that you think we ought to?
I think a big thing was the court experiences. The first time my case was read off, I think because when all of those legal terms are used, it can make things sound a lot worse than they are. Reactions that people had when my case was read off. Overall, just feeling kind of outcasted or judged by people, it was difficult. It felt like people forgot that I had feelings in the situation as well. Asking someone if they're okay or like how they're getting through with it, it's such an important thing to do, regardless of what they did. Because when people commit crimes or they get in legal trouble or they do certain things, I think, a lot of it has to do with things they've gone through, things they're facing. And with my case, it wasn't intentional whatsoever, so mine didn't have anything to do with, oh, I wasn't in the right mental space. But after the accident, I was definitely not doing the best. And so I think just making sure to check in on people when things like that happen is definitely a very vital and important thing to do. I think overall the experience of the judge was pretty difficult because he had originally asked my age, but he hadn't asked really anybody prior to that. And my mom had asked to speak up because she was in the courtroom at the time to explain that I was a college student commuting an hour to get to the courthouse. My mom just wanted to explain that, it'd probably be better if we met online for my case. And he essentially said to my mom, well, it doesn't matter. She's a criminal. She has to show up for her case. I was shocked over that. I understand that judges have their opinion, but in this situation, they aren't supposed to have that kind of opinion or that much of an aggressive opinion. I try my best to talk to everybody with such respect, even the judge and even the DA or my attorney or anything like that. Regardless of the emotional stress I was under, those people still deserve respect because they are people. And I wanted to be treated the same. Definitely wish my case was handled a little bit better by the judge, but at the end of the day, if I saw him out in public, I would still, say have a good day or something along those lines, because probably not an easy job whatsoever, but it's definitely a job where you should still show respect. The judge that I met with last was very kind. He even wished me a happy late birthday. So that was nice that the final judge that I saw was kind.
So if you can get the sheriff, the DA, the judge, anyone else who had opportunity to interact with you in a court setting in front of you to tell them how they could improve their act, what would you tell them?
The sheriff, I would explain to him, try and at least put yourself in other people's shoes. Everyone else was pretty easygoing and nice to be around. If I was talking to the group of individuals in the courtroom, I would say to maybe think about how you talk to the judge, because that also is a big thing. People are referring to the judge as sir or ma'am, and that's not proper court etiquette. I think just people doing research before they take on something like that.
As you know, Rae, there are three parts to the Stay Free Forever podcast. The second part has me share some work, usually from someone else's course, but on occasion from the coursework of the person with whom I'm speaking. And I was so pleased with yours, I thought I would just focus exclusively on a couple of yours and get your thoughts a little deeper into what you wrote, okay?
Okay.
One of my tattoos reads, "It's better to feel pain than nothing at all."
That's a Lumineers lyric. When I was a kid, their music was a big escape for me. It is true. Our emotions are such roller coasters, but to actually feel the experiences that you're living and really look at them and feel it all the way allows you to grow as a person, but also just bring so much light to life. And allows you to really understand that we only have a one-time experience at life.
The question was asked, why did Debbie accept abusive relationships in adulthood? And you wrote, Debbie accepted abusive relationships in adulthood due to the fact that she was programmed to believe that it was all she was deserving of. She searched for something she had only ever experienced because it was all she had been used to. Her subconscious mind believed that was the only experience out there for her.
Yes, 100%. It can be a hard thing to overcome what you're taught. So many people are programmed by parents, or it's the people that they're around, to have this idea that things are a one-way street. And it's not. And I think that the more you decide to explore yourself and the way that you're living life, I think the more you start to enjoy it, honestly. And it was very unfortunate for Debbie in the story, the way that things played out for her.
I heard someone say once that the second you realize that your parents had something to do with the way you turn out in life, at that very moment, it becomes your responsibility.
I think a big part of the reason that my parents treated me the way that they did was because they did not take responsibility for the part that they played in what their parents put them through. Whether I'm in a relationship or I have a friend or it's my siblings, from situations that I've experienced before, the way that I choose to treat other people affects how much I really appreciate this person being in my life. Because you could experience the worst thing in the world, and you can't let that give definition to how you choose to move forward. It's important that you try and look at it from a different perspective. So, yes, I do believe that you are responsible for how you treat others and what you do with what you've been through.
The question was about the course itself, and you wrote, I believe that this course has given me a deeper understanding of how to continue treating others positively, as well as the kind of individuals I'd like to surround myself with. Furthermore, this course has also given me a lot of insight on how our minds work and how to handle situations properly and cope emotionally as well. I always have the desire to improve myself as a person. One little course can do all that.
I was surprised as well how much it taught me, because I was given a description of what it was, but I didn't realize how much it would actually help me overcome a lot of the things that I faced during the accident and after the accident. It gives you examples of what your life could look like, what it does look like, and what you can do to make it like how you want it to be. And I think that it's important to always find ways to continue being a better person. And this was definitely one of the bigger things that actually helped me. It helped me explain some feelings that I didn't understand before. And you would think a small course about questions about other people, it wouldn't teach you a whole lot, but it definitely does. And it was very insightful. And I'm thankful that I got to experience it.
The part about choosing who you hang with, you've mentioned it a couple of times, who you associate with, who you hang with, who your friends are, who your friends aren't.
Being in my freshman year of college, I had to learn a lot about the people that I wanted to surround myself with. Started out with people that I thought were my friends, but then I realized that these were people that were wanting to party or wanting to not stay on top of their things. And once I got my grades back from last semester and I realized these weren't as great as I wanted them to be, I realized that it was time to take the step to decide not to have those people in my life, because whether you have attachment to these people or not, if they're negatively affecting your life, it's not worth it. Because I always look at a situation of how much good am I talking about it and how much bad am I talking about it. And if I'm talking more bad about it, then it's clearly an issue. I would talk to my significant other about it and just explain what I was going through. And it just helped me come to the realization that these weren't people that I wanted to be around. Some of them I stayed friends with because they actually made the effort to change as individuals. And I realized, hey, these are the people that are actually wanting to do something with their life. I want to be like that. Once I cut those people out of my life that were affecting me, I started to enjoy what I was doing a lot more because I wasn't being hard on myself. I didn't feel judged because I wasn't wanting to go party and flunk my classes. It definitely is important who you surround yourself with because you never realize how much it affects you until those people aren't in your life anymore.
Well, Rae, how do you cut someone out of your life without either hurting their feelings or having them come back at you negatively?
A lot of people struggle with taking things like that very well, which is understandable. People stopping talking to another person, it can be hard, but I think explaining, here's the letter A, you did this, and here's how it affected me. And then B is, I'm trying to grow and this isn't helping me. And C is, if you really care about me and truly want me to be happy, like you claim, or are actually my friend, then you would understand I'm doing this for the better of myself. And it can be hard being in the position of cutting people out of your life because I connect a lot with the people that I end up allowing into my life. But it was such a reward to realize after so long that I wanted to do better and I wanted to be able to give myself better. It isn't an easy experience, but it definitely has its rewards when you are able to do it.
And once you've done it a few times, it gets easier, right?
Exactly, 100%.
As for our third portion of this conversation, Rae, as you know, we each were to be prepared with a quote or a passage that has some meaning for us. Who would you like to go first?
You can go first. That works.
Like I said, I was really interested in your foster care situation, and so I found four quotes from people who have been foster parents. I don't know if any of these people were ever foster brothers or sisters. So, the author Tanya Christie said, "You might be temporary in their lives, they might be temporary in yours, but there is nothing temporary about the love or the lesson."
That is very true. No matter the time that you spend at something or with somebody, it's never a waste. Caring about people and putting the time into helping, it's never a waste. And I think that is beautifully said and definitely is 100% true.
What's a specific lesson or specific situation or foster brother or sister that you remember that exemplifies what she says in that quote?
The memories that I have of my brother, unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but the memories of him being so calm and happy when he was with us compared to being with his biological family, that was kind of the memories that allowed him to hang on a little longer, which is just incredible because you never realize just how much a little bit of love or kindness can go.
Was it illness that claimed him?
No, unfortunately, he it was suicide.
I'm so sorry to hear that. How old was he?
He was 15.
15. I think it's remarkable that you mentioned him, which obviously is a painful parting, but you mentioned him as an inspiration despite that.
Yes, 100%.
The activist and author Jody Landers said, "Children born to another woman call me mom. The magnitude of that tragedy and the depth of that privilege are not lost on me."
That is a way to put it. I've had this idea that if I did ever have children, possibly adopting or even fostering, it's such a privilege, but also very devastating to know what led up to that experience. To know that someone appreciates another individual for what they're providing is just amazing, but also the fact that there are individuals that are willing to provide for other people who didn't have that.
The businesswoman and interior designer Leanne Toohey said, families don't have to match. You don't have to look like someone else to love them.
I think that's very sweet, especially foster families or adopted families 100%. But that goes for just about anybody. I mean, you can have somebody that is a friend that you consider family. And I mean, it's nice to know when you find those people that you're able to connect with and just able to love because they understand you and because you make them feel understood.
And then the actress Nicole Kidman wrote, somehow destiny comes into play. These children end up with you and you end up with them. It's something quite magical.
That is definitely a great way of putting it. To meet people that have gone through such terrible experiences, whether their parents were physically abusive or they struggled with substance abuse or whatever the situation might be, to have somebody come into your life that is still filled with so much love and joy and wants to receive it, but also give it, no matter what they experienced, is just, I think, beautiful because it goes to show that there can still be kind people even when they have gone through terrible experiences. They made the choice to grow and to do better and to give better and receive better.
Excellent. All right, it's your turn.
A Taylor Swift lyric. It's at the end of her song Daylight, and she is essentially saying that like she doesn't want to be defined by the things she's afraid of or the things that haunt her, keep her up in the middle of the night. And then at the end, she says, "You are what you love." And that's kind of been something that I have been wanting to get tattooed, but also that my significant other, we repeat it back to each other all the time because, I think it makes it easy to appreciate yourself more and be kind to yourself. Understand that you're somebody that is important to other people. There is a reason you are here and you have purpose.
Seems to me to give you permission to be kinder and gentler toward the people and the things that you love because they're a reflection of you.
Exactly. And I think once you're able to be kind to yourself, you're able to give so much back to other people.
Well, I can't imagine a more enjoyable way to spend an afternoon talking to a bright young person like yourself, Rae. Thank you very much for making the time to do the podcast.
Thank you, Cliff. It really has been such a pleasure, experiencing the course itself and then being able to talk about how I've grown as a person and just be able to share my story has been very nice. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, it's my privilege to help you share it. You did a great job.
Thank you so much.
The Stay Free Forever podcast is recorded and produced by Clifford Fuel, owner of Stay Free Forever, LLC, a Colorado and Wyoming company. Stay Free Forever provides adult and youth life skills courses via both e-learning and mailed workbooks, plus Zoom classes for any age group. Our theme music was composed and performed by James Benjamin Fuel. Editing and technical assistance are provided by Mary Tulin. My name is Molly Moore. For more information, go to stayfreeforever.com or email clifford@stayfreeforever.com.